The Collapse. Part 2. Lost. By V.A. Brandon. Chapter 1. The stink in the fruit and vegetable shop grew worse by the hour. Amy lay in the dark, trying to ignore the phlegmatic groans and hisses outside the small building. It was unsettling to know that a thin wall was all that stood between them and the runners outside. How many of them were out there? 10? 50? 100? Were the streets just teeming with them? She squeezed her eyes shut, willing them to go away. They sounded far too close. A fly buzzed past Amy's ear, and she jerked in fright. Even the smallest touch made her jumpy. She quickly sat up and squinted into the darkness. She could make out the sleeping outlines of her friends on the ground, but she couldn't tell who was whom. How could they sleep so peacefully with all that noise outside? Weren't they afraid? With a heavy sigh, she lay down again, telling herself to calm down, when a soft rustling noise in the far corner caught her attention. It stopped, then began in earnest again. Fear turned to ice in her veins. Amy bolted up. "Who's there?" Her mouth was dry. She swallowed painfully and tried again. "Who's over there?" "It's me," Marie whispered. "Please lower your voice. We must stay quiet." "I know that," Amy replied, annoyed and relieved at the same time. She rose to her feet and stumbled toward Marie's voice, stretching her arms out before her. She tripped over a plastic fruit box, but managed to avoid falling flat on her face. When she reached Marie, she grabbed the young woman's shoulders to balance herself. "I could not sleep," Marie said as she rummaged around the fruit boxes. She bent down to sniff at something, then jerked back as she tossed it away. "Oh, that smells terrible. We cannot eat that." "Is there anything left for us here?" Amy asked, faintly amused. "I thought the flies and ants took care of that." She grabbed the nearest apple when Marie stopped her. "Be careful," she warned. "There are maggots in some of them." Gagging, Amy dropped the apple as though she had been burned. The two women fell silent as Marie dutifully checked the boxes for edible fruits that hadn't been ravaged yet. Luckily for them, she found some oranges. They were pretty ripe, but at least they hadn't started to rot. They sauntered over to the vegetable corner and were pleased to find edible potatoes, onions, carrots, and garlic. Marie immediately began filling clear plastic bags with them. "This is very good," she said happily. "We will eat them for breakfast and save our canned meals for another day." They decided that each person should carry at least 10 potatoes, more if they didn't mind the weight. It would feed them for an extra several days while they were on the road. Satisfied with the results, the two women sat cross-legged under a window, enjoying the scant moonlight that filtered in. Amy was profoundly grateful that the owner had thought to put up security bars over all the windows in the shop. It gave her a sense of protection, at the very least. "I feel bad about Ms. Wentworth." Marie looked into Amy's eyes. What happened in Justin's apartment? Why was she fighting with Patrick? Amy sighed and rubbed her face. Patrick was trying to steal her food. It was always about the damn food. Her gaze traveled over to the sleeping forms sprawled on the floor. Having adjusted to the dark, her eyes could now pick out which one was Patrick. The older man was lying on his back, looking as though he didn't have a care in the world. Marie stared hard at Patrick. "Do you think we can trust him?" Amy gave a mirthless chuckle. "Not one bit." "Does he have to come with us?" Marie asked carefully. Amy didn't answer right away. She had been asking herself the same question ever since the accident with Ms. Wentworth. Why does he have to come with us? But then, how could they leave him? He wouldn't survive one day without them. As annoying as he was, Amy didn't want to be responsible for his death. And besides, there was another reason. "Justin won't leave him behind," she said finally. "It'll just eat away at his conscience until he decides to risk everyone's life by coming back for him." Marie ducked her head. "I am sorry. It was a terrible suggestion. I am usually not so mean-spirited." "Oh, don't worry," Amy said with a wry smile. "It's not like I haven't thought about it. Heck, I even thought about tossing him off the balcony when Ms. Wentworth fell over." Marie shook her head, not knowing what to say after that. Truthfully, Patrick brought out the worst in them. If they managed to reach the farm without abandoning anyone along the way, it would be a miracle. "Get up, it's time for breakfast." Patrick sounded irritated as he nudged a foot against Amy's right hip. When she didn't get up, he nudged her again. "What's wrong with you? Are you sick or something?" Amy cracked open an eyelid. "Stop poking me with your foot." "And yes, I am sick." She sat up and glared at him. "I'm sick with worry. We all are." Daniel and Marie made baked potatoes. Justin quickly cut in, trying to defuse the tension. "We've got orange slices as well. So let's eat." The 5 of them sat on the floor and ate their meals in silence. Patrick devoured his potatoes, ignoring the rest of the group. The rest of them ate slowly, lost in their thoughts. Amy listened carefully as she bit into the soft, hot flesh of her potato. The streets sounded deserted. Maybe they would be able to sneak into the parking lot and get Justin's Jeep. With a glimmer of hope, she hurriedly finished her potato and reached for another one. "So, you think Garrett will come back for us?" Patrick asked, wiping his hands on his pants. Justin shook his head. "I doubt it. It's more likely that we'll meet up somewhere along the highway. We'll have to find our own transportation out of here." "We do not even know if Garrett and Benson made it," Daniel said, shooting a worried glance at his wife. He knew that Marie had taken a strong maternal liking to the kid. The last time we saw them, there were runners hanging onto the camper van. Patrick snorted. "Oh please. If Garrett can't even handle a couple of runners, then we're better off on our own." When Amy opened her mouth to protest, Justin reached out and squeezed her arm. He shot her a stern glance. "Not now," his eyes warned. She glared at him, but complied all the same. This wasn't the place to have their usual petty arguments. Daniel carefully peeked out of the window. "I cannot see the runners." He turned to look at Justin. "When do you want to get your Jeep?" "Right now," Justin answered as he stood up to join Daniel at the window. He glanced at the rest of the group. "Is that okay with everyone?" Nods all around. With that settled, they slung their stuffed backpacks over their shoulders and picked up their weapons. It was time to leave this place. "Daniel and I will go get the Jeep. Be prepared and wait for us here. As soon as you see us, run." When the others didn't reply, Justin and Daniel stepped out, holding their weapons in front of them. The rest of them trailed behind, their nervous eyes darting this way and that to make sure that there weren't any runners lurking about. With a sly grin, Patrick positioned himself between Amy and Marie, since he had no weapons. Amy shook her head in disgust and walked on. The 3 of them squatted in front of the shop, trying to look as inconspicuous as possible while Justin and Daniel crouched and ran across the street. Soon, they disappeared into the dark parking lot. Amy's gaze wandered, then froze as it landed on a severed hand on the sidewalk near the apartment building. Some of the fingers were clad in cheap jewelry. It was Ms. Wentworth's hand. Amy bit back a groan, but the sound managed to escape from her lips anyway. "Be quiet," she scolded herself, but the whimper came again. And again. Patrick jerked in fright. "What's making that noise?" Belatedly, Amy realized that the sound hadn't been coming from her. The whimpering grew stronger, a familiar noise made by many lovable pets. Understanding dawned on her. Could it be? "It is Walter," Marie whispered as she lowered her head to look under a parked car. At first, Amy could only see a dark-colored backpack beneath the car. Then she noticed the furry black face poking out from the unzipped top, its shiny eyes staring back at them. It was Walter, and the poor thing had been outside all night, in the presence of the runners. With a breathless cry, Marie crawled over to the car and reached under to grab the bag. As soon as she pulled the bag to her chest, Walter arched forward and began licking her face in earnest, grateful to see a familiar face. Marie crawled back to them, looking relieved as she hugged the dog even closer. Amy nudged Marie's backpack toward Patrick. "Since you aren't carrying anything, you might as well help out with this," she said. "Marie has to carry Walter." To her surprise, Patrick nodded and quickly slung the heavy bag over his shoulders without complaint. She wondered if Patrick was finally willing to help out, but that thought soon vanished when he smirked at her. "All the food in this bag is mine now. Just so you know." "You really want to play that game?" Amy shot back. "Because once you hog that food, you won't be getting any of the food in our bags when you run out. You'll have to scrounge more from elsewhere." It seemed Patrick hadn't considered that. His face reddened with anger, but he clamped his mouth shut and didn't say anything. It was just as well, because Justin's Jeep suddenly burst out into the morning light, weaved, then came to a screeching halt about 20 yards from where they were squatting. Daniel threw open the door. "Get in," he yelled. Several runners ran out of the parking lot, snarling as they picked up speed. When Patrick saw them, he yelped and raced toward the waiting vehicle, not looking back to see if Amy and Marie were following. Amy pushed Marie forward. As the two women sprinted toward the car, Patrick slid into the back seat and impulsively shut the door closed. "Patrick, what are you doing?" Justin shouted as he whirled around in the driver's seat. Voices rose and a brief struggle ensued as Daniel leaned over to open the door again. Marie and Amy slid in once the door opened, and Amy hurriedly shut the door after her, breathless with fear. "Go!" Patrick shouted, then screamed as something slammed into the windshield behind them. Amy tossed a frightened glance over her shoulder and saw spider cracks spreading over the glass panel. Several more hits, and there would be nothing more than splintered pieces of glass stuck around the window frame. The runner rammed his head into the panel again. On the third attempt, his bleeding head pierced through the glass, causing mindless chaos inside the Jeep. Walter barked ferociously, foaming at the snout. "Step on it, damn you!" Amy yelled at Justin, clawing at his head to grab his attention. A thudding noise sounded on the roof, snapping Justin out of his trance. He slammed on the gas pedal and barreled down the street, knocking down a stray runner idly wandering near the intersection. Chapter 2. A minute later, Daniel put a hand on Justin's shoulder. "You do not have to go so fast," he said quietly. "I think we are safe now." Justin released a long exhale and nodded. As the Jeep slowed down, Daniel shifted to stare incredulously at his wife. "I heard a dog barking." His tone was wary, as though he were questioning his sanity. Marie smiled happily. "We found Walter. He was under a parked car." At the sound of his name, the dog poked his head out of the bag again. When Daniel laughed in amazement, the dog whined and leaned over to lick his hand. "What happened to Garrett and Benson?" Justin wondered aloud as he looked at them through the rearview mirror. How did Walter end up underneath the car? No one wanted to speculate. Patrick, however, had no qualms about voicing their innermost fears. "Maybe the runners got them. You saw the way the runners were hanging onto the camper van, didn't you?" He settled into his seat, a satisfied grin plastered on his face. "You see, folks, this is what happens when you desert your friends to save your own miserable hide. I, for one, say good riddance to that selfish bastard." Marie glared at him. "You are truly the worst person I have ever met." Patrick squeezed Marie's thigh in a suggestive manner. "Sweetheart, you need to do what you do best. Sit there like a pretty doll and shut up. No one cares what you think. Don't touch my wife." Daniel leaned over and knocked Patrick's hand away, his eyes sparking with barely concealed fury. Amy had never seen him so angry before. A small part of her wanted to see how this would play out, but she knew it was time to put their conflict to rest. At this rate, it would get pretty intense in the car real quick. "Patrick, how quickly you forget." Amy flashed a fake smile. "We're going to the farm that belongs to Garrett's friend. If you despise our neighbor that much, maybe we should just part ways right now. I mean, he's basically our ticket to that farm." She paused. "Is there a place where we can drop you off?" Patrick appeared startled for a brief second, then shot her a sour look as the truth of her words sank in. There was nowhere for him to go. It was imperative that he remain on Garrett's good side, in and out of earshot, and pray that the man was still alive. Blessed silence fell inside the jeep. Amy closed her eyes, relishing the peace and the soft vibrations of the moving vehicle. When Walter whined softly for attention, she snapped open her eyes and smiled at the dog. "I have no doubt that Garrett and Benson are fine," she said, stressing on Benson's name as she looked at Marie. Walter probably rolled out of the open door when the camper van weaved around the street. In fact, I bet they're on the highway now, waiting for us at a safe spot. Cheered by the thought, Justin popped in a CD and sang off-key to an old 80s song that sounded vaguely familiar to Amy. He was so tone-deaf that Marie started giggling behind her hand. Amy shook her head, smiling, but inwardly, she felt uneasy. She hoped she was right. She prayed that Garrett and Benson were safe and waiting for them. Otherwise, their little group was on their own, and they had nowhere to go. It was midday by the time they reached Great Memorial Highway. Patrick sat in the back, demolishing 3 baked potatoes. Walter barked at him, but the older man ignored the hungry dog and stared out the window, quickly draining 2/3 of his water bottle. Daniel sighed and reached into his bag, pulling out 1 baked potato. He gazed up at Marie, a wry smile on his face. "It is the last cooked potato in my bag," he informed her. She shook her head. "Give it to Walter." "I am not hungry," she said, even as her stomach growled in angry protest. She blushed and cleared her throat. "I am not hungry," she repeated, as though trying to convince her empty stomach. "It's lunchtime, and we have to eat," Justin interrupted. He pointed toward a small, hilly spot beside the highway. "Why don't we take a rest over there? We can open some of the cans and have a hearty meal." Minutes later, they sat on the springy grass and basked in the afternoon sun, eating cold spaghetti out of the can. Daniel found Walter's bag of kibbles squashed into the bottom of his backpack. There was still plenty left for the dog. Walter wagged his tail furiously and buried his nose into the crinkled bag. "Not yet. You need some water first," Marie said, running a hand through the dog's slightly matted fur. A few steps away, Patrick watched silently as the dog lapped up the water Marie had poured into her cupped hand. His lips were pressed together, the splotchy skin around the edges indicating his irritation. Amy scooted closer to Justin. "What happened back there?" she asked, scraping the bottom of the can with her spoon. She slurped the last bloated strands of pasta into her mouth. "You kind of froze in your seat." "What do you mean?" Justin looked up, bemused. His expression cleared once he realized what she was referring to. "Oh, you mean on the street?" "Yes, on the street." Truthfully, she had been a bit surprised by his dazed reaction. As a group, they'd had closer calls than a runner ramming its head against the windshield. Had he already forgotten their hair-raising trip to Papa's? "I thought I saw someone I recognized." When Amy stared at him blankly, he sighed and rubbed his forehead. "The runner that rammed into the windshield. I think it was Troy Robinson. It just caught me off guard." "Wow, I guess he didn't make it to work that morning then." Justin shot her an exasperated look. "Thanks for stating the obvious." When everyone finished eating, they packed their meager belongings and went back to the jeep. Once they had settled in, Justin slowly drove down the highway, weaving around the abandoned cars littering the lanes. Amy pressed her face against the window and peered at the open doors and ravaged bodies inside the cars. Feeling her gorge rise, she hurriedly looked away and closed her eyes. "I think we should stop and search through these cars," she said once the nausea subsided. She didn't like what she was saying, but it felt like the most logical thing to do. They might have extra blankets, food, candy, water, clothes, things we'll need soon. "You mean loot the dead?" Patrick asked, disgust in his eyes. "Is that what we've become? Scavengers?" No one answered. Thick, suffocating silence filled the car as they considered Patrick's words. Looting the dead was a distasteful act, No one would argue with that. But it wasn't as if they could just stop by at Central Creek Mall to get what they needed. That place was probably crawling with runners. "We don't have enough food to last us," Amy said finally. "I agree that it's wrong, but we don't really have a choice." Heavy silence fell over them again. Amy stared at Justin, feeling a strange resentment growing in her. Why wasn't he saying anything? And why was he avoiding her eyes? Was he repulsed by the fact that she had even suggested it in the first place? "Say something." Her voice was tight. "Tell me what you're thinking." Justin shot her a harried glance. "I'm thinking that we don't need to resort to such drastic measures. It'll take less than a day to get to the farm. We've got more than we need right here." His gaze softened. "I know you mean well, but—" "That's fine," Amy cut in. "If you don't want to do it, then let's just go." She couldn't bear the cajoling tone in his voice. Even worse, she had seen something like pity in his eyes. She tore her gaze away and stared out of the window, fighting to keep her temper down. "You heard the woman. Now go!" Patrick ordered from the back seat, sounding deeply satisfied with himself. "We've wasted enough time already." Marie shifted around to look at Amy. "If it's worth anything, I agree with you," she said. She rubbed Walter's fur absent-mindedly. "I hope Justin is right. If we meet Garrett on the highway, maybe we will reach the farm by evening." "Let's not keep the man waiting then," Justin said, not bothering to hide the fact that he'd been eavesdropping on them. Amy noticed him looking at her through the rearview mirror. But she ignored him. It would take a while before she was ready to speak to him again. Chapter 3. They had been on the highway for over an hour. To their growing dismay, the number of abandoned cars and trucks increased the farther they went. One time, Justin almost slammed into a pileup of pickup trucks and family wagons. He cursed under his breath as he drove around the smashed vehicles. A teddy bear lay on the asphalt, face down among bits of broken glass, and Amy quickly looked away, not wanting to think about the victims of this deadly accident. A few minutes later, Justin gave a whoop of delight. "Everyone look up. Do you see that?" Everyone obliged him. "What are we looking for?" Daniel asked, peering intently at the cloudless expanse of blue skies. "Was it a helicopter?" Patrick asked eagerly. "Or a military aircraft?" Justin gave a dry chuckle. "Nothing that dramatic." He nodded to his right. "Take a look at that billboard." It was an ad for some insurance company Amy had never heard of. But right below the male model with the big cheesy grin were large, spray-painted words in block letters. "Could not wait. Went to get daughter. Meet you at friend's place. P.S. We are fine." "Garrett was here," Marie exclaimed, clapping her hands. "He and Benson are safe." "I told you they were all right, didn't I?" Amy said, awash with profound relief. Justin smiled at her through the rearview mirror. "Remind me to listen to you next time." Amy rolled her eyes at him, but she smiled inwardly, somewhat mollified. "While we're here, let's stop for a bathroom break," Patrick said, grimacing in pain. He rubbed his stomach, then glanced hopefully at Daniel. "Hey, you got any toilet paper in that bag of yours?" "I'm afraid not," Daniel replied. "So sorry, but maybe you can find some leaves. I hear they are quite effective, as long as they are not poisonous." Patrick turned to Justin, his eyes wild. "You must have at least a wad of paper." Justin shook his head. "Sorry, pal. I'm afraid I don't. If you're worried about the poisonous flora, just use a small rock to scrape yourself clean," Amy said, trying to keep a straight face. "But be careful, some of those rocks are wicked sharp. You don't want to come back with tattered flesh dangling from your butt." "Oh, dear God!" Patrick cried out as he dashed out of the Jeep and into the trees. When he disappeared from their sight, Amy cast a suspicious glance at the rest of the group. "Seriously? No one has toilet paper?" There was a long pause, and then Daniel pulled out a thick roll of paper from his backpack. He shrugged when his wife gawked at him. "I am saving this for a rainy day." Amy smirked. Serves him right for stuffing his belly with all those baked potatoes. Maybe next time, he'll learn to share. What we did was not nice. Marie chided, but her shoulders shook with suppressed laughter as she rummaged through her husband's bag. Do we have medicine for his stomach pains? Just aspirin. Marie seemed at a loss. Well, we cannot help him then. I hope he feels better when he comes back. Don't worry about Patrick. He's a big boy. Amy stifled a grin and patted Marie on the arm. I'm sure he'll be fine. Half an hour had passed, but Patrick was still in the woods. Amy yawned and leaned against the door, bored out of her mind. He was taking too long. Was he lost? She wondered if they should go out and search for him. Maybe his condition was worse than they'd previously thought. I'm going outside to look for him, Amy declared to no one in particular. She sat up and was about to open the door when Marie stirred beside her. Wait, she said. We will go together. Justin rubbed his face tiredly and sat up in his seat. We're going to be leaving soon. Don't go far. With a nod, Amy opened the door quietly and slid out with her golf club. Walter whined, and Marie paused to comfort him before joining Amy outside. The two women eyed their surroundings. For now, everything seemed quiet and still, but who knew what lurked behind the abandoned cars and trees? They had to be extra careful just in case. They hurried toward the trees to avoid staying out in the open longer than they had to. Amy pressed herself against a tree trunk, hating how vulnerable she felt. Patrick, she called out, are you in there? Silence greeted them, and Amy's annoyance flared. Marie came up behind Amy. Let us go in a little farther, she whispered. I am sure he is around somewhere. If we don't find him within 5 minutes, I'm out of here, Amy replied. We've wasted enough time as it is. The two women ventured deeper into the trees, casting nervous glances as they stepped on dead leaves and broken branches strewn over the ground. They continued walking for a few minutes when Marie suddenly stopped and grabbed Amy's elbow. Do you hear that? She asked. All Amy could hear was the sound of rustling leaves above them. Then she heard it, a deep shuffling noise, followed by muttered swearing. She raised her brows. Looks like we found Patrick. Marie went forward, softly calling his name. The shuffling stopped, and Patrick emerged from behind a thick, gnarly trunk. What are you girls doing here? He asked, his face red with irritation. He wiped his sweaty face on his sleeve. It's been more than 30 minutes, Amy pointed out. We're leaving soon, so we thought we'd come and get you. Marie looked up at him carefully. Are you feeling better? Yes, Patrick said, brushing aside her concern. No thanks to all of you. I know someone has a toilet roll, but of course you wouldn't want to share it with me. Bet you all had a good laugh in the Jeep just now. I swear, one of these days... Quiet. Amy clapped a hand over Patrick's mouth. Do you hear that? Get your hand off me. Patrick swatted her arm away. Marie stared hard at the rustling leaves overhead. It is just the wind. But it was more than that. It wasn't the sound of a gentle breeze swaying the branches and leaves. It was the sound of snapping branches and frenzied thuds on the dirt floor. Like someone was running. And it was coming their way. Time to go, Amy breathed, and the three of them began to run. A distant snarl filled the air, causing a violent shiver to run down Amy's spine. She leaped over a fallen branch and pumped her legs to go faster. She prayed that she wouldn't trip and sprain an ankle. An unbidden image of Ms. Wentworth falling over the balcony and her death screams filled Amy's ears, and she gritted her teeth. It won't happen to us. The snarl grew closer. They were almost out in the open. To her dismay, she saw Justin idling around outside, stretching his body and swinging his blood-soaked baseball bat in a pretend game. Daniel was still inside the Jeep, his legs propped up on the dashboard. By the looks of it, he was still napping. Get inside the car. Amy screamed once she stumbled out into the light. Justin jerked around, surprised, then rapped loudly on the window to wake Daniel. Patrick surged forward, leaving the women to trail behind him. "I've got this," Justin said when they reached him. "Get inside." "But you can't." "I said get inside." Without another word, Amy and Marie slid across the seat and slammed the door shut. Daniel stared at his wife for a beat, then stepped out of the Jeep with his fire poker. It happened in an instant. 1 second, Justin was standing a few feet away from the Jeep. The next second, he was thrown against the Jeep, struggling with the runner on top of him. His baseball bat rolled across the hot asphalt and came to a stop at Daniel's feet. Quietly, Daniel snuck up behind the runner and rammed his poker through its left temple. The runner attempted to take a bite out of Justin's neck before slumping over him. With a look of disgust, Justin pushed the deadweight away. "Thanks again," he said to Daniel as he bent down to pick up his bat. He was breathing hard. "This must be the 3rd time you've saved me, right?" Daniel gave a small grin. "Yes, but who's counting?" His smile faded. "Are you all right?" "That runner scratched up my arms." Red welts ran down Justin's arms, and a thin trail of blood pooled on the inside of one elbow. "But it's nothing serious. Could have been a lot worse, I guess." Daniel nodded. "The runner could have gouged your flesh off." "Well, we'd better move along," Justin said, wiping off the blood. "We've wasted enough time already." When they settled into their seats, Amy leaned forward to look at Justin's arms. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked. "I mean, light scratches don't infect people, right?" "I don't think they do," Marie answered. "You become a runner when they bite you. Their hands are only dangerous because they can use them to tear your flesh." "I guess that's good news then." Justin maneuvered the Jeep around the cars and drove down the highway. Silence fell over everyone. It had been an exhausting day, and it was only mid-afternoon. Amy yawned and leaned back on the headrest. She wondered when they would reach the farm. If things went well, they might even get a decent meal for tonight's dinner. She was certain that Garrett's friend raised chickens on his farm. Maybe they would have chicken pie, with salad greens and freshly baked cookies. Or roast chicken, with custard pudding for dessert. It would be nice to have a home-cooked dinner instead of all the canned and packaged meals they'd been living on. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, Walter's barks startled her awake and rang in her ears. He wouldn't stop, even when Marie comforted him with soothing strokes. His ears flattened and his posture tense. He faced the windshield and continued barking. "Could you please control your dog?" Patrick shouted. Before Marie could stop him, the man reached out and smacked the dog on its snout. Walter let out a pained yelp and frantically pawed at his nose. "Don't hit him." Marie pushed Patrick away, grunting with the exertion. A brief struggle ensued in the back seat. Suddenly, Patrick howled and fell back when Walter leaped forward and bit him on the arm. "Quiet down," Justin shouted. "There's no time for this." "That rabid dog bit me." Amy snorted. "He didn't even puncture the skin." Justin braked and whirled around in his seat, his eyes blazing. "Cut it out, the both of you. We may have bigger problems here." "What is it?" Marie asked, breathless. Daniel leaned forward, peering at the horizon. "There's something in the distance. It's coming this way." That ominous statement was enough to silence everyone. Amy squinted her eyes, trying to see better. Up ahead, a black mass like a swarm of bees filled the highway. It was coming toward them, and it was fast. The fine hairs on the back of Amy's neck rose when she realized what she was seeing. They were runners. Hundreds, maybe thousands. And they were running right at them. Chapter 4. Justin made a U-turn and drove away from the monstrous sight. "Where are we going?" Amy asked. His jaw tightened. "Anywhere but here." Patrick swore loudly. "Just great. At this rate, we'll never reach the farm by evening." "We don't have a choice," Daniel argued. He turned around in his seat to glare at Patrick. "Do you think the runners will only run past our parked vehicle? Won't they slam against the Jeep, push it, and jump on the roof? He shook his head. We won't last a minute. We must find safety until the stampede goes away. He was absolutely right. But where could they go? Obviously, they couldn't continue along the highway. The insane horde would be right behind them for hours on end. So how to shake them off? A hoarse sound rose behind them in the distance, like many unintelligible whispers. It made Amy's skin crawl, and she surreptitiously rubbed the gooseflesh that had sprouted on her arms. Marie tapped Justin on the shoulder. I remember seeing an interchange on the left. We should go there. I have no idea where that leads. We'll figure that out later, Amy said. Let's just hope the runners don't follow us down that route. With a grim nod, Justin pressed down on the accelerator and drove at an unrelenting pace until the interchange materialized before their eyes. Here goes, he muttered, and he swerved the Jeep to the left. They had been on the road for hours. At first, their plan had been to go down the interchange and wait out the stampede. Once they were sure it was long gone, they would return to the highway and continue toward the farm. They just hadn't expected dozens of runners to make a left turn and give chase. The runners had been relentless. If it had been one or two, their group might have done something about the stragglers running after them. But 50-odd runners chasing at a frenzied speed? They had no choice but to continue on. An hour later, they had managed to shake off the remaining runners, but by then, they were hopelessly lost. They were hungry, cranky, and frightened, made all the worse by the darkening sky. They would need to stop and find shelter for the approaching night. Once they had food in their bellies, they would regroup and discuss what to do next. Let's go into the woods, Justin suggested as the Jeep crawled to a stop. He rubbed his tired eyes. After what happened on the highway, I really don't want to stay out in the open. There might be runners in the woods as well, Daniel pointed out. Justin gave a dry chuckle. Maybe 2 or 3. But we can handle that. I just want to avoid the hordes. Who would argue with that? When no one opposed the idea, Justin drove slowly into the trees, finally coming to a stop near a small clearing. We'll stay here tonight, he said. Justin and Daniel immediately stepped out with their backpacks to set up camp. Marie carried the backpack with Walter in it and went to find large sticks to make a small fire. As Amy opened the door, she paused to throw a glance over her shoulder. Aren't you coming out? Patrick slouched in his seat. I won't be much use. I'll just sit here and watch the Jeep. Was this a good idea? What if he decided to steal their only means of transportation while everyone was outside? Amy bit her lip. Patrick had no idea where the farm was. Only she and Justin knew the directions. Without the rest of their little group, he wouldn't even last a day out there. Still, she decided to play it safe. She leaned toward the driver's seat and flipped down the sun visor. Earlier, she had seen Justin placing the keys there before stepping outside with Daniel. The small set of keys jangled as it landed on her open palm. Patrick snorted behind her. If I really wanted to steal this junk, you think a missing set of keys will stop me? Probably not. Amy leaned back and stared at him from across the back seat. She observed him for a while. Ever since their escape from the apartment building, they hadn't really had a chance to sit down and talk about what had happened with Ms. Wentworth. They had been too busy surviving. But they had time now. What happened in Justin's apartment? She asked softly. Why were you fighting with Ms. Wentworth? Patrick went on the defensive. Changing the subject, are we? No. It's something that's been on everyone's mind, and you know it. I would say it's a subject that's long overdue. He eyed her carefully, and Amy wondered if he was going to jump up and flee. After a while, a look of resignation settled across his tired face. Look, don't believe everything she said, okay? I know what that old bag told you, but she was lying. She was forgetful. Sometimes she would eat the food, but then she would forget about it. And the next thing I know, she would be accusing me of eating everything. And she believed her own lies too. It drove me nuts. When Amy didn't say anything, he continued on. Yesterday, I just about had enough. I thought, why not? No one believed me anyway. I might as well become the villain everyone was accusing me of. At least I'd be a villain with a full stomach, right? So I started smashing the cabinet that contained her food. A look of regret passed his face. I just didn't expect that things would turn out the way they did. You kicked her, causing her to fall off the balcony. I was out of my mind with fear. She wouldn't let go of me. His sorrow seemed convincing enough, but Amy felt unsure. There was something a little too neat about the story that painted him as the victim. Never mind the fact that she'd also witnessed his greed for food. She'd seen him hoarding candies and fighting about who should get the larger portions. Even the way he had devoured the baked potatoes without any regard for others made his story less believable. The smell of cooked vegetables wafted into the Jeep, and Amy's stomach gave a rumbling growl. Marie was probably steaming them in a small pot. A thick vegetable stew would have been nice, but they had to conserve their water. Amy narrowed her eyes. "This conversation isn't over," she said to Patrick. "Far from it." And before he could say anything, she stepped outside to join the others for dinner. "We'll have to put out this fire soon," Justin said as Amy and Patrick sat down beside the group. "We can't risk it, especially if there are stray runners around these woods." He cast a hopeful glance at Marie. "Do you think the vegetables are done?" "Almost," she replied. "I cut the potatoes and vegetables into small pieces. They will cook faster that way." "Good thinking," Amy said, approval in her voice. "They should be done in a couple of minutes then." Moments later, they sat there and devoured their meal, blowing on the potatoes and carrots as they bit into the hot chunks fresh from the pot. Dinner was bland, but luckily, Justin found several old sachets of ketchup inside one of the pockets of his backpack. They dipped their vegetables into the sauce to give them more flavor. It wasn't the tastiest meal, but at least it filled their bellies with warm food. Marie reserved a handful of cooled vegetables for Walter, who sniffed at them before eating them delicately from her outstretched palm. When he finished, he licked her hand to show his gratitude. "All right, let's talk about our sleeping arrangements," Justin said once everyone was done eating. He seemed in a hurry to put dinner behind them. As he tossed dirt over the small fire, instant darkness fell over the group. Amy blinked, trying to adjust her vision to the sudden blackness around her. "Here's what we'll do. Amy and Marie will sleep inside the Jeep. The rest of us will sleep outside. Daniel cleared the place earlier, so the ground should be fairly comfortable. Wish we had a few blankets though." Amy heard him shift toward her direction. "I guess you were right. We probably should have searched through those abandoned cars for extra clothing, blankets, and food." He sighed. "Live and learn, right?" "I suppose," Amy said tartly. "Although listening to sound advice in the first place would have saved you a lot of headache now." "Can't argue with that," he answered. He rubbed his hands together. "So, is everyone okay with these arrangements?" Everyone murmured their assent. "Good. Then try to get a good night's sleep. We're going to leave as soon as day breaks." With a mighty yawn, Amy settled in the Jeep and reclined the front passenger seat. What a crazy day it had been. She propped her legs up on the dashboard and stared at the night sky. As often happened when she was alone with her thoughts, she pictured her mom's smiling face, gleaning some comfort from the memory. It was wishful thinking to hope that she was still alive, but Amy couldn't help it. She missed her mom so much that her heart sometimes constricted from the pain. But she highly doubted that her stepfather was resourceful enough to keep her mom safe. At the very least, she hoped that jerk hadn't abandoned her mom to save his own miserable hide. From behind, Marie opened the door and slid noisily across the seat, puffing with exertion as Walter barked happily. "Quiet," she commanded. "It is bedtime, Walter." Amy sat up and smiled sheepishly at Marie. "Sorry about not helping with the cleanup. I'll do it next time." Marie laughed. "Oh, don't worry. I made my husband clean the pot. I went for a short walking exercise with Walter." She paused. "Also, he needed to pee." Is there enough room in the back for you and Walter? Oh yes. There is plenty of room. I will stretch my legs across the seat, and he can sleep on my stomach. It is perfect. Amy settled into her seat again. Good night, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, she muttered, recalling what her mom used to say to her at bedtime when she was a child. Back then, it had just been the two of them. No jerk posing as a stepfather in her life. It had been great. There are no bed bugs here, Amy, Marie said, and Amy smiled sadly to herself before closing her eyes. Look, we don't have much food. That's all we have. Well, I don't know about that. Say, that's a nice-looking vehicle you've got there. Please, you can take the food and the medical kit, but we need that car. Silence, then the sound of snapping twigs sounded next to Amy's side of the Jeep. She groaned and sat up, rubbing her eyes. The sky was still dark. What time was it? It wasn't even dawn yet. A burly man with a goatee brought his face close to the window. He was holding a gun. His smile widened when Amy gasped in surprise and leaned away from him. From the corner of her eye, she saw Marie sitting against the door, her hand around Walter's snout to suppress his barks. Amy understood. The man had a gun, and though he might think twice about shooting a person, an annoying, loud animal might be another matter altogether. Walter struggled against Marie, his body shaking with his muffled barks. Good morning. The man's smile faded. Get out of the vehicle. Now. Chapter 5. When Amy stepped out of the Jeep, the first thing she noticed was that the man had not come alone. Standing behind Justin, Daniel, and Patrick were 3 other men, holding rifles and guns. She glanced at Justin, who stood there staring at the stranger with a wary expression. What was going on? Who were these men, and how had they found their group? Move along. Go stand next to your friends over there. Amy and Marie complied, not wishing to anger the man. He had a gun after all. Still, despite their fierce countenance, Amy remained hopeful that their visitors wouldn't get violent. They were all survivors in this crazy place overrun by runners. They were now the minority. In a sense, she understood their need for caution. Their small group stood in a line, side by side. Meanwhile, one of the men began rummaging through the backpacks, pulling out items and tossing them onto the ground. Seconds later, a toilet paper roll came flying out of Daniel's bag and landed in front of them. Patrick shot an accusing glance at Daniel, who ignored him and stared straight ahead. The leader ran his fingers and thumbed down his chin and grunted. Disappointing. Still, I guess it's better than nothing. His stern gaze fell on Marie, who hugged Walter tighter to her chest. I see you have a live animal there. When do you plan on eating him? We will never do that. She burst out angrily. Then give him to us, one of the men shot out. He stared hungrily at Walter. We haven't had real meat in a while. Justin raised his palms and stepped forward. Look, the dog doesn't belong to us. It belongs to a boy who's waiting for us to return his dog to him. He's already lost his father. He doesn't need to lose his beloved pet too. The dog stays with us, Daniel piped up, narrowing his eyes at the leader. This is not open for debate. The leader grinned, as though amused by Daniel's audacity. Brave words. But remember, I'm the one with the gun. He paced before them. Lucky for you, I'm feeling quite generous today, so I'll let you choose. The dog or the Jeep? His grin widened. It's up to you. What kind of insanity was this? Wasn't it enough that they were taking their food? Why are you doing this? Amy asked, her voice rising in anger. You already have our food. Are you seriously going to leave us out here with no vehicle? Have you seen the hordes of runners on the highway? The leader raised his bushy brows. Runners? He repeated. Is that what you're calling the infected? Because they run? The other men laughed, as though it was the funniest thing they'd heard. Amy pressed her lips together, trying to suppress her fury. She had been so naive. These men weren't survivors. They were thugs. Plain and simple. Before she could say anything else, Patrick roughly yanked Walter out of Marie's arms and thrust him toward the leader's direction. Walter snarled and writhed in his hands, trying to bite him. "Here. Take the damn dog. You can roast him on a spit for all I care. But you're not taking the jeep. Give him back to me," Marie shouted, reaching for Walter. She clawed at Patrick's face, who yelped and threw his arms up to shield himself, dropping Walter in the process. The dog yipped as it landed on the ground, rolled twice, and then shot forward to sink his canines into the leader's exposed ankle. The burly man bellowed like a wounded beast and kicked his leg up, flinging Walter into a nearby bush. Pandemonium ensued. Daniel elbowed the man standing behind him in the face and then did some kind of powerful reverse kick that knocked the man down. Beside him, Justin punched the second man standing behind them. Judging by the ungodly howls, Justin had broken the man's nose. That left guard number 3. He aimed his gun at Amy, but she didn't hesitate, surprising even herself. She rammed the tip of her shoe into his groin with all the strength she could muster. The man released a breathless scream and fell on his knees, cupping his injured groin with both hands. His gun lay on the ground beside him. All of this happened in a matter of seconds. Amy picked up the gun and steadied herself. She was surprised by how light the gun was, but put aside that thought to focus on finding the leader. The sound of a running engine froze her on the spot. Just as she'd feared, the leader was seated on the driver's side of the jeep. Justin ran to the vehicle and tried to yank open the door, but it was locked. With a soundless laugh, the leader gave an obnoxious cheery wave and drove off. The car keys. But how? Amy felt around her pockets, then groaned aloud as she realized she had placed them on top of the dashboard the night before. In desperation, she raised the gun and squeezed the trigger, hoping to blow out one of the tires. Hoping to hit something. Nothing happened. She squeezed again. Still nothing. Confused, she raised the weapon and studied it closely, wondering if the safety switch was on. She was inexperienced with guns, but even she knew that something wasn't right. This was confirmed several seconds later when Justin came up beside her, a wry smile on his lips. "It's a toy gun," he said. He barked out a humorless laugh. "These punks fooled us with replicas. Should we go after him?" Justin paused. "He's probably long gone by now." Marie walked over to them, brushing dirt off Walter's fur as she carefully cradled him in her arms. The poor dog looked the worse for wear, judging by the way he kept lifting his right paw. He seemed reluctant to let it rest on Marie's arm. Daniel hurried over to his wife. "Are you all right?" he asked, checking her for any injuries. She nodded. "I'm fine. But I think Walter sprained his paw." She hugged him closer, her pale face creased with worry. "I hope it's not serious." A small groan rose up behind them. Amy stared at the incapacitated visitors. "What about these men? Do we tie them up or let them go?" "We've got nothing to tie them with," Justin grunted. "Their leader took the jeep and our backpacks." A few paces from them, Patrick was rushing here and there, picking up the strewn items on the ground. Toilet paper roll, several food cans, a carrot, a clean t-shirt, Walter's rolled-up bag of kibbles, a water bottle, and bottled aspirin. He bundled the items in the t-shirt and straightened, tossing a furious look at the men. "Just leave them here," he spat out. "They can crawl back to their campsite wherever that is." His expression turned ugly. "Maybe the runners will finish them off on the way." That still didn't solve the fact that they now had no vehicle. Where were they to procure another car? "We don't have a choice. We must return to the highway and find a working car," Daniel said, looking resigned. He paused, then reached over to pluck the bundled items from Patrick's arms. "And I'll take these since they're from my backpack." The older man was displeased, but didn't say anything. Was he perhaps afraid that he might also be knocked down with a swift kick to the head if he said otherwise? Amy stifled a giggle and turned to Daniel. "I didn't know you had martial arts training," she said. What you did just now was incredible. He shrugged. Many Korean children learn Taekwondo after school. I only learned for a few years. It is nothing really. Justin stared at the lightning sky. We better get a move on. And grab the toy rifles and guns. They may be fake, but other survivors don't know that. They'll give the appearance that we're armed. Good idea. Amy jammed the gun into her back pocket. But I don't have the golf club anymore. It was in the Jeep. We still have the baseball bat and the fire poker, so at least that's something. Justin pointed at Daniel. Stay in the back. I'll be in front in case something jumps out at us. The group huddled together and shuffled out of the clearing. As the rest of them scanned the surroundings for signs of stray runners, Patrick raised his hands and felt along his cheeks. He winced in pain. You scratched the skin off my face. My cheeks feel like they're burning. Scowling, Marie snapped her head around. You deserved it. Her scowl faded to a disapproving glance. Don't worry so much, the scratches are not deep. They'll scab soon. They better. I don't have a single scar on my face. And I don't intend to start having them now. Amy rolled her eyes and moved up to Justin. Hey, she said, walking beside him. He smiled. Hey yourself. So what exactly are our plans here? Like Daniel said, the first thing we need to do is find a working car. Yes, and he mentioned the highway. Justin shrugged. That's where all the cars are. She placed a hand on his arm. And what about the runners that chased us down the interchange? What if they're still there, just hanging around? She shook her head slowly. We need to find a car here. We'll never make it to the highway on foot. You have a point, he said with a heavy sigh. Minutes later, the group emerged out of the woods and stood nervously at the side of the empty road. Well, we can't go toward the highway then, Daniel said softly. He had overheard their conversation earlier, which means we must go the other way. This didn't sit well with Patrick. And what then? You think there won't be runners there? This only takes us farther away from the farm. He swore loudly. If that's the case, we should just return to our apartment building. We never should have left in the first place. Amy frowned. If memory serves, we left because we had no choice. Your noisy fight with Ms. Wentworth brought the runners to Justin's apartment, remember? Before Patrick could think of a retort, she turned around to address the rest of the group. I say we head down this road and see if we can find anything, vehicles, food, weapons, anything that can help us. It's our only option. What if we meet other thieves on the way? Marie asked, looking nervous. What if that man comes back and brings more people? It was an uncomfortable thought that had lingered in the back of Amy's mind. What if he brought more reinforcements? They had hurt several of his men. Would he merely return to his camp to lick his wounds? And what about his men whom they had wounded? As soon as they recovered, would they want revenge for the broken nose, the concussion, and the bruised crotch? But then they had the Jeep, didn't they? Tit for tat and all that. Still, it would be best to play it safe and find a hiding place. It wasn't wise to stay out in the open for too long. All right. We have two immediate goals right now. We find a proper place where we can hide. Once we do that, we can take turns looking for a working car in the area. Justin nodded at Amy. I like that plan. It'll give us time to regroup and prepare for our journey. With a hopeful smile, he faced the group. Is everyone okay with this? No one objected. Even Patrick seemed fine with the idea, judging by his relaxed posture. Great. Then let's go. Don't fall behind and stay away from the road. They walked in single file behind Justin, trying to keep as inconspicuous as possible. The morning heat rose sharply, and Amy squirmed in her crumpled clothes, trying to ignore the cloud of body odor floating around them. Up ahead, the winding road seemed endless. She swallowed her dismay and prayed that something good awaited them at the end, and not another horde of crazed runners coming their way. Chapter 6. They had walked for over 3 hours. For Amy, this should have been easy. She'd been a track athlete in high school, and she'd continued running for pleasure throughout her college years. So this should have been easy. Only she was dying inside. She wiped the sweat dripping into her eyes. "I need to stop," she breathed out. "Let's take a short break. Just for a few minutes." Daniel took out his water bottle from his t-shirt bundle and handed it to her. "Take small sips and drink slowly." "What about the rest of us?" Patrick panted. "We're exhausted too, you know." "We'll take turns," Marie replied. As an afterthought, she added, "We will drink first. Then you will drink last. I have a feeling you will not leave enough water if you drink before us." Ignoring the older man's protests, Marie accepted the bottle from Amy and took a small sip. She then poured some into her curved palm for Walter. The grateful dog whined softly and lapped at the warm water thirstily. Next up, Justin and Daniel took small sips. It was obvious from their expressions that they wanted to drink more, but Justin quickly capped the bottle and handed it to Patrick. "Here," he said with a forced smile. He looked almost reluctant, which was so unlike him. Patrick snatched the bottle, tossed the cap away, and chugged the remaining water down his throat. Upon finishing it, he moaned in disgust and leaned against a tree trunk, his body limp. "I'm exhausted. There are blisters growing on my feet, I'm dizzy from the heat, and I'm weak with hunger." He plopped down on the dirt ground. "I don't know about you, but I have to eat something. Right now." Uncertainty filled Daniel's eyes as he turned to Justin. "We do have to eat something," he said quietly. "I have a few cans of food and a carrot. But is it safe to eat out here?" "Yes. It's fine," Patrick snapped. He reached up and waved his hands in a come here gesture. "Hand over the food. Don't be greedy now." With a sigh, Daniel gave him an entire can of spaghetti and meatballs, leaving 2 cans and a raw carrot for the remaining 4 of them. He then turned around and handed the beef stew to Amy. "Can you share with Justin?" he asked. He looked down at the last can. It was minestrone. "My wife and I will share this one." When Amy nodded, he snapped the carrot in half and gave her the bigger portion. "Take this too." "It's too big," she protested. "You should share that with Marie and Walter." "He has the kibbles," Daniel answered. He jabbed the air with the blunt end of the carrot. "Here. Take it." Amy murmured her thanks and watched as Daniel returned to join his wife and Walter. She glanced at Justin and gave a helpless shrug. "I feel awful. He's given us too much." He smiled. "It's done now, so don't worry about it." He pointed at a small shaded spot. "Let's sit there and eat." After their quick lunch, they resumed their walk along the road. They now had no food and no water. It was paramount that they find water, shelter, and food soon. Marie suddenly grabbed Amy's arm, startling her. "What is it?" Amy asked, coming to a stop. "Did you see something? A runner?" Marie frowned at Walter, who gazed up at her with quizzical eyes. "I thought I saw a diner." Patrick came up behind them. "Are you sure?" He squinted, trying to see better. "I don't see anything." Had she imagined it? A diner could mean food and water. It would be the answer to their prayers, if the previous occupants hadn't cleaned out the place already. There was a long silence, and then Justin let out an incredulous laugh. "Guys, it might be even better than that." He leaned forward as if he couldn't believe his eyes. "I think I see a gas station." A gas station? That meant vending machines and convenience stores. Amy's mind went into overdrive as she pictured herself standing in an aisle filled with packets of cookies and sweets. Foods such as pre-packaged sandwiches and hot dogs would be out of the question, but at least there should be bottled drinks and water. And cans of coffee. What she wouldn't give for a sip of that caffeinated goodness. Mouth-watering, she resumed her pace. She was so preoccupied that she didn't hear Justin calling out to her. "Hey!" He jogged over to her and grabbed her elbow. "Slow down a bit. Don't separate yourself from the group." He signaled to the others, and they hurried over to join them. Daniel stared into the distance, his eyes hopeful. Maybe we can use the place as a hideout. There's too much glass though, Justin mused. We'd be exposed. But one of the storerooms might work. Patrick released a gusty sigh of frustration. Look, can we go now? Or are we just going to stand here all day? He pointed a long finger before him. There's food over there. And water. So what are we waiting for? After a moment of hesitation, Justin nodded slowly. All right. Let's go. They stood several yards away from the convenience store, eyeing their surroundings warily. The place seemed deserted. The glass windows were crusted with dirt from top to bottom, and the pungent odor of stale urine assaulted their nostrils. Wrinkling her nose in distaste, Amy stepped toward the open entrance and peered into the semi-darkness. The place was a mess. She could see empty food packets strewn across the floor. One of the aisle shelves had toppled over and was leaning precariously against the one next to it. Seeing this, she let out a heavy sigh. We'll be lucky if there's anything left in here, she muttered under her breath. The others came up behind her and piled inside, glad to be out of the afternoon heat. Justin paused at the threshold and held out a hand. Why aren't you coming in? He smiled. Come on, let's see what we can scrounge from this mess. Returning his smile with one of her own, Amy took his hand and entered inside. Marie and Daniel were already pacing here and there, opening cracked cooler doors and grabbing whatever they could find. Patrick was checking out the shelves. Judging by his pleased expression, there was a fair amount of food there. Encouraged, Amy went to the next aisle to get to work. Several minutes later, the group gathered in the middle of the store, their food in a small pile before them. Bottled water, sodas, trail mix, packs of beef jerky, chocolate bars, whole grain crackers, large cans of chili and stew. Someone had even tossed in several travel kits containing soap, shampoo and toothpaste, a pack of green glow sticks, and a box of birthday candles. And there was coffee. Blessed cans of coffee. Amy almost wept at the sight of it. Where do we put them? Daniel asked, interrupting Amy from her thoughts. Justin glanced around the store. If we're planning to stay here, we can move the food into one of the back rooms. There's still a lot of food left in the store, so we'll have to find time to make an inventory of it. His eyes gleamed with excitement. The food will last us for weeks. One person didn't look happy about the idea. Marie stroked Walter's fur, her brows furrowed. We must take the food and leave, she said. Patrick groaned out loud. Geez, what is your problem? There's food and water here, can't you see? Food and water. He crossed his arms, his face splotchy with anger. We're not budging an inch from this place. If you want to leave, you go alone. We cannot stay here, even if we want to. Marie continued, ignoring the older man's outburst. Indicating that they should follow her, she moved swiftly to the back of the store. Not knowing what else to do, the rest of the group obeyed and went. Old blankets and mattresses lined the floor. Rumpled clothes, scuffed shoes, backpacks, empty food packets, a blood-stained hatchet leaning in the corner. It became abundantly clear at once. There were people who had already staked a claim to this place, meaning their group's presence would not be welcome here. I saw this when I was looking for food in the back, Marie explained. At first, I thought the place was abandoned. Maybe the people had left. But an abandoned place smells dusty and moldy. Her nostrils flared in disgust. This area smells strongly of body odor. This means there are people still living here. The stink might be coming from us, Patrick joked. Marie shook her head. It's not the same. She was right. They had to leave at once. Suddenly afraid, Amy glanced around the store again. After their close encounter with the thugs this morning, she was in no hurry to meet other people. The looks on Daniel's and Justin's faces pretty much said the same. Daniel jerked forward and grabbed two of the bags, emptying them of their contents. Without a word, he rushed back to their pile of food and began tossing them into the bags. Amy and Justin went to help him, Marie trailing close behind. Patrick remained standing near the mattresses. "You're all overreacting. And even if there are people staying here, so what? We'll use these fake guns to scare them away." "Are you serious?" Amy spluttered. She stood up, glaring at him. "And what if these people are dangerous? They could be gun fanatics for all we know. And if they are, they'll figure out soon enough that these are fakes. They could very well kill us for fooling them and for taking their food." She ran over to the counter and grabbed handfuls of cigarette packs and lighters. "We need to leave before they return. It's too risky here." When she came back, Justin gave her a curious glance. "I didn't know you smoked." "They're not for me," she answered, tossing them into the bag next to her. "We can barter them for goods we may need in the future." Daniel shot her a look of approval. "Good idea." Hefting the bags over their shoulders, Justin and Daniel quickly made their way outside. As Marie and Amy hurried after them, Amy paused briefly to look at Patrick. "Are you coming or not?" With great reluctance, Patrick joined them at the entrance, a perpetual scowl imprinted on his face. "I'm telling you, this is a mistake. You'll regret not staying here." "Then stay here. I'm done trying to convince you." And grabbing Marie's arm, Amy hurried after Justin and Daniel, not looking back to see if the older man was following them or not. On the way, they stopped to rest at a nearby field. Judging by the eviscerated, rotting bodies of livestock and horses lying half-hidden in the tall blades of grass, hordes of runners had already been through this place. His expression grim, Justin led the group away from the scene of the buzzing flies feasting on the carcasses until the stink of death no longer followed them. "We'll take a quick 10-minute break here," he said, dropping the backpack at his feet. Without pause, he crouched down and began pulling out sodas and coffee, trail mix, chocolate bars, along with a handful of kibbles for Walter. After making sure that everyone had an equal amount of food, he sat cross-legged on the grass and tore the wrappings off a chocolate bar, demolishing the melted candy in seconds. Amy sat beside him, tentatively opening her own candy bar. She had no appetite. The gruesome scene had left her feeling nauseated. She took a small bite of the semi-melted bar, then handed it to Justin. "Finish this for me, will you? I can't eat right now." "Are you sure?" Worried, Justin opened a can of coffee and handed it to her. "Here. At least have something to drink then." With a weak nod, she accepted the can and took a few swallows, unable to stop thinking about the poor animals. How they must have run. It would have been better if they'd been eaten by a pride of ravenous lions. At least it would have been a lot quicker. "Well, what now?" Patrick asked, glaring at them as he wiped his mouth on his sleeve. "Where do we go? It's going to get dark in a few hours, and we have no shelter." No one said anything, but Amy was certain that they were all thinking the same thing. What if Patrick had been right? What was worse, facing a group of potentially hostile survivors, or a horde of infected cannibals in the dark? They were out in the open and completely vulnerable. Without proper weapons and shelter, they wouldn't survive the night. Despair began to set in. Amy drew in a deep breath, striving to calm her racing heart. She could feel herself teetering on the brink of hysteria. If she let herself succumb to this fear, she was afraid that she'd start screaming and screaming. Madness would consume her. Daniel rose to his feet and dusted his pants. "Then let's go now," he said, scrunching up his candy wrapper and stuffing it in his back pocket. He picked up the backpack and gazed at the rest of the group with a steady eye. "We have no time to waste." Nods all around. Marie stood up and held Walter toward her husband. "Carry Walter. I will carry the fire poker and the backpack for an hour." He shook his head. "It's heavy." "Take a break," Amy cut in. "Marie and I will take turns. And Patrick can help Justin with his load." She turned to the older man. "Right?" Patrick snorted but didn't argue. Amy was grateful for the Korean man's calming effect on the group. Determined once more, they continued along their trajectory, hoping to find a small building, a motel, a store, even bathroom facilities, where they could safely spend the night. Chapter 7. It was twilight by the time they finally got off the highway and veered toward a street closed off for roadwork and other unfinished construction sites. They stood before a flight of concrete stairs that led to what looked like an abandoned pedestrian tunnel. "Where do you think it leads?" Daniel asked. Justin shook his head. "I don't know, but I think it's an underground city, or what was supposed to be the beginnings of one." He shrugged. "It could lead anywhere or nowhere." "So what do we do?" Amy asked. "Go in or go back?" She crouched and peered ahead, trying to see. As expected, the tunnel was pitch black. "We could go and stay in the woods again," Daniel said half-heartedly. "No," Justin said at once. "We're not doing that, not without a car." "Then we have to enter the tunnel." Marie turned to Amy. "We can use the glow sticks from the convenience store." Amy had a better idea. "No, let's use the lighters instead," she said. "Glow sticks can be risky, especially if we need to put out the lights and hide. The lighters will get hot quickly." "We'll use candles then," Amy answered. Justin gave them a tight smile. "I guess that settles it. We're going in." Patrick crossed his arms, a stubborn expression on his face. "I'm not going down there. There could be runners. We don't know where the tunnel leads. For all we know, we could be trapped in the dark for hours. The other option is to stay out in the open, at night, when the runners are most active." Amy understood the older man's trepidation, but his resistance was only delaying the inevitable. Going underground is still better than being out here. When no argument was forthcoming, she took out candles and a lighter from one of the backpacks and lit them as fast as her fingers would allow. After handing a candle to each person, she turned to face the group. "What are we waiting for?" she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "Let's go." Justin gently took hold of her arm and pulled her behind him. "Stay close. Daniel," he called, "cover the rear. Patrick and Marie will stay in the middle." His eyes narrowed. "Everyone, stay as quiet as you can." Then he reached out to scratch Walter behind the ears. "You be quiet too, okay? Good boy." The dog whined softly in response, as if he understood the dire situation they were in. Taking a deep breath, Justin pulled out the baseball bat from his backpack and began walking down the stairs. "Okay. Here we go." The others followed behind him, huddling as close as possible. As suspected, the candle flames weren't enough for the enveloping darkness in the tunnel below. Amy could barely see 3 feet ahead of her. She tried not to stare at the flame too much. It was causing light spots to dance across her vision. Blinking hard, she tilted the candle horizontally to avoid the hot wax sliding down onto her fingers. "I can't see a damn thing," Patrick said, breathing hard into Amy's ear as he gripped her shoulder. "Where the heck are we going?" Amy said nothing, but she reached back and gave him a pinch on the arm, firm enough to get her message across. Understanding instantly, he refrained from speaking again. But he kept his trembling hand on her shoulder, unwilling to let go. Amy didn't shrug him off. If the physical contact gave him a small measure of comfort, then she wasn't going to take that away from him. They must have walked for more than 5 minutes. Slowly, Amy's eyes adjusted to the dark, allowing her to see the outlines of what looked like a half-constructed subway station, with ticket booths and platform stairs that led farther below the tunnel. Nervously, Amy quickened her footsteps. The space was too big, and there were too many hiding places. What if there were runners lurking beneath those stairs? She bit down on a groan and walked on. To make things worse, the tunnel soon forked into 2 passageways. The group stood there, flabbergasted. "Where do we go?" Daniel asked. He raised his candle to see better. "There are no signs anywhere." Amy heard Justin scratching his head. "If we make the wrong choice, we could get into serious trouble. We could end up trapping ourselves." He sighed heavily at a loss. "Guys, I'm open to suggestions here. I say we go left, Patrick said. Why left? Amy asked. Just a gut feeling, I suppose. That wasn't good enough. Their lives could be at stake here, and Amy certainly wasn't going to base a critical decision on someone's gut feeling. I say we go right, she murmured. She raised her candle, peering into the darkness. The passage on the right looks much wider, which could have shops and even lead to more passageways or exits. If we do run into runners, she paused to lick her dry lips, we'll have more room to run or hide. I don't like the idea of being trapped in a dark, narrow tunnel with runners. If there's a wider network of tunnels, we could end up getting separated or lost if we're attacked, Justin mused. Amy shrugged. Maybe, but I'd rather be lost and alive than trapped with no escape route. No one had an answer to that. The truth was, they knew nothing. Everything that Amy had said were mere guesses only. The narrow passage on the left could very well widen into a larger tunnel or lead them out into a safe building. And the passage on the right could be a dead end, filled with runners. It could turn out to be the trap that she was hoping to avoid. Daniel shifted, his expression grim. We'll vote on it. The small flame beneath his face gave him a ghoulish appearance, and Amy let out an involuntary shiver. Who wants to go left? Unsurprisingly, Patrick raised his hand. And who wants to go right? Amy and Marie raised their hands. Aren't you two voting? Amy asked Daniel and Justin. I go where my wife goes, Daniel said simply. Justin shook his head. I don't care where we go. All that matters to me is that we stick together. Separation is not an option. She patted his arm. Don't worry, that won't happen. With feigned determination, she strode toward the right passage, listening carefully. Silence greeted her. No hisses, growls, or shuffling sounds. She prayed that it would remain that way. Come on, let's get this over and done with, she sighed. They huddled once again and moved toward the darkness. They had been lucky so far. The passage was wide and spacious. To their left and right were empty window shops and kiosks, waiting for new business owners to rent the place. It was like a mini-mall. A couple of times, smaller intersecting tunnels left them confused as to which direction they should go. In the end, they always opted to go straight ahead. It was as if a sixth sense was telling them that something good would be waiting for them at the end of the passage. One time, Patrick let out a breathless scream when he stepped on a soft and squishy object. Startled, Marie dropped her candle. The candle stub rolled on the ground, revealing a bloated, shadowy face staring back up at them. There were small bite marks all over the skin. Is it a dead runner? Amy asked, swallowing the bile rising in her throat. Crouching, Justin examined the dead body. No, it's a dead person. He doesn't seem to have been bitten by runners, though. He reached out and felt along the cold body, checking for signs of bites. By the looks of things, he probably escaped from the runners, and then died from natural causes like a heart attack. Those must be rat bites on his face, Daniel said. He looked up, quickly looking in both directions. I wonder where he was running from. The answer soon became plainly obvious. The man's prostrate position revealed that he had been running away from the tunnel, away from the direction in which they were heading now. Maybe it was runners waiting for them at the end of the passage after all. What do we do? Amy asked. Should we go back? Indecision flickered in Justin's face. We're almost there. For all we know, the runners could have moved on to another place. That's true. Amy picked up the candle and blew out the small flame. Instead of tossing the candle aside, she pocketed the warm stub. They could use it again later by balancing it on a flat surface. We can take a quick look, Daniel suggested. A couple of us will go up and check if there are runners. If we're quiet and don't attract attention, it should be fine. Everyone in agreement, they made their way to the end of the passage. Minutes later, they stood before a wide flight of stairs, gazing up at the faint moonlight filtering in. They were reluctant to go up. Sounds of hisses and snarls traveled down to where they were standing. There were runners outside, and by the sounds of it, there were several roaming about. They pressed themselves against the wall. "Let's go back," Patrick said, fear plain on his face. "Let's go. Right now." He was right. But they had to do one thing before leaving. Amy glanced at Justin. "Let's take a quick peek. We need to know where we are. And maybe it's not so bad." She gave the group a weak grin. "Maybe there aren't that many runners out there." Justin nodded. "All right. Amy and I will go up and take a look. I want the rest of you to stay here, away from sight." His lips thinned. "And in the off chance that one of them spots us, be prepared to run." With that said, Amy and Justin blew out their candles and tiptoed up the concrete stairs. The full moon hung in all its glory, allowing Amy to see. She and Justin crouched and raised their heads, peeking above the ground. Her stomach dropped as she saw shops, alfresco restaurants, the blood-stained fountain, broken windows, and ravaged bodies lying on the ground. In the midst of all this, about 20 or so runners shuffled around, some falling to their bony knees to consume the scattered remains of the corpses. "I don't believe this," Amy said, recognizing the place. Justin gripped her shoulder, squeezing hard. "We've seen enough. Let's go." And he pulled her down the stairs. Amy's mind reeled. How could this have happened? Just the day before, they had been on the highway. They had been chased down an unfamiliar interchange by dozens of runners. At the end of that road, they had entered a newly constructed network of tunnels, hoping to find a safe shelter for the night. Instead of safety, however, the passageway had brought them right back to where it all began, the place where they were running from, where everyone had been running from since day one. The tunnel had brought them right on the outskirts of Central Creek Mall. Chapter 8. Where are we right now? Patrick asked when Amy and Justin came back down. The two exchanged quick glances. Motioning that they should follow him, Justin led the group away from the stairs, heading deeper into the dark. "What did you see?" Daniel asked. Justin came to a stop and spun around. "We have bad news," he answered abruptly. Patrick released a frustrated groan. "What is it? Get to the point already." "Hey," Amy said fiercely. "Quiet down, will you?" She nervously eyed the stairs and lowered her voice to a whisper. "There are about 20 runners outside, and we don't want to grab their attention." That bit of information promptly shut Patrick up. "We need to leave," she continued. There was no point in delaying it. They had to know. Softly she added, "We're at Central Creek Mall. It's right above our heads." Patrick let out a shaky breath. "You've got to be kidding me." The whole outbreak had started at this very location. Amy could still clearly remember eating breakfast with Justin and hearing about the news on the radio. That had taken place a few weeks ago. So much had happened since then. "We can go back into the tunnel and leave from another exit," Marie said, hugging Walter closer to her. "Maybe it will lead us away from the mall." "It's better than hanging around here," Justin agreed. "Okay, let's go." A low growl escaped from Walter's snout, growing more vicious with each second. Marie instantly clamped her fingers around his snout. "Please, Walter, be quiet." But he kept growling, writhing in Marie's arms. At first, Amy couldn't hear a thing. Then her ears picked up a familiar sound, ragged breathing. Around the same time she realized they weren't alone in the dark. Daniel lifted his fire poker, pushing the pointy end outward. "Put that down," ordered a soft, accented voice. "If you don't, I will shoot you. I have a gun." Amy's fear blossomed in her chest. Had those thugs followed them all the way here? But how? Were they in the tunnel now? A lean man of below-average height stepped forward, and Amy jumped when she saw the weird device strapped to his head. It took a moment for her to realize that he was wearing night vision goggles. The man paused, then slipped the heavy goggles off, revealing the features of an Asian man with balding gray hair. "Put out the candles," he said. One of you hold on to me. The rest of you, form a line behind your friend and link hands so you don't get lost." His serious tone left no room for argument. Not knowing what else to do, they complied with the stranger's orders. Instant darkness swathed them as they extinguished the small flames one by one. Amy blinked, suddenly frightened. Before, those small flames had felt insufficient. But now that they were gone, she realized how much comfort the scant light had provided. "Very good," the man said. "Now follow me. Don't be afraid." The man led them through the suffocating darkness and away from the runners above. It turned out that the man had gone through a staff door, down a narrow corridor, and into a gray room. To Amy's delight, 2 LED lanterns sat at either ends of the room, giving the place much-needed lighting. She could see cleaning products and brand-new mop buckets. And cushions. Lots of cushions and folded blankets. "This is my office," he said as he moved items around to make more room for his guests. "I'm one of the cleaning supervisors at Central Creek Mall." He reached for the tall bottle sitting on a small round table and poured water into 5 paper cups. He handed them out one by one. "Thank you," Daniel said, accepting the cup with both hands. "Where did you get the water from?" Patrick asked as he threw his head back and gulped the water thirstily. "My urine," the man said without missing a beat, causing Patrick to spit out the remaining water in horror. The man calmly wiped the spots of water off his face. "I'm sorry, that was a terrible joke. It's bottled water from one of the mall supermarkets." He gave them an apologetic grin. "You can drink it. It's safe." With nervous laughter, they drank the water and quenched their thirst. The man also gave some to Walter, who lapped at the water gratefully from a small cup. He told them to put their belongings in the office, then led them out into the darkened corridor and into the next room. Like the office, the place was lit with lanterns. Besides a lone, rectangular table in the middle and folding chairs stacked against the wall, the place was mostly empty. In its former life, the place had probably been some type of meeting room for the supervisors. The man introduced himself as Kong Min Soo as he leaned over a portable cooking stove and unwrapped something. He peered intently, poking at it with a finger. "Still warm. Good." He looked up at his guests. "Are you hungry?" Everyone nodded. Mr. Kong grunted. "Good thing I made enough food. Grab a chair and make yourselves comfortable. We're having real meat tonight." Minutes later, they sat at the table, armed with plastic utensils. Amy stared at the plateful of cooked meats presented whole before them. There was something familiar about their size and shape. "Mr. Kong, this looks great. What kind of meat is it?" she asked politely. He gave her a smile. "We're eating guinea pig." After a pause, he added, "You're not squeamish about that, are you?" No, of course not. They had mostly subsisted on canned meals and junk food for weeks. As long as it wasn't someone's pet, she was fine with it. Hungrily, Patrick reached over and sliced off a haunch. "This looks fantastic. Where did you find them?" "Well," Mr. Kong scratched at his neck. He looked as if he were contemplating whether to tell them or not. "I got them from the pet store on the 2nd floor," he said finally. "When I got there, they were the only animals that were still alive." Hearing that, Amy felt briefly squeamish. In 5th grade, her class had kept 2 guinea pigs, a male and a female. Every Friday afternoon, she and a friend had always cleaned out the cage and replaced the soiled newspaper with fresh ones. She remembered their plump and furry cuteness, and most of all, their incessant squeaking. On second thought, Amy didn't feel that bad about eating them after all. They helped themselves to the meat, their appetites voracious. It felt good to eat food that wasn't bottled, canned, or packaged. Silence fell upon them, their focus entirely on the act of shoveling warm food into their gaping mouths. At their feet, Walter made a pitiful sound, raising a questioning paw. Mr. Kong wiped his greasy fingers on his baggy pants and looked down at the dog. Feeling left out? When he stood up to get an extra plate for Walter, Daniel stood up as well. "He has his kibbles," You don't have to. Mr. Kong brushed off Daniel's protests with a wave of his hand. Oh, it's all right. In fact, let's mix up his kibbles with a little meat. Bet he'll appreciate that. Marie stood up as well, looking apologetic. Then he can have my portion. Please sit and eat your meal, Mr. Kong. I will prepare Walter's dinner. And before he could say anything else, she hurried outside and into the next room to get the kibbles. When everyone finished their meal, they helped Mr. Kong clean the table and the utensils with wet tissues. Amy eyed the tub of baby wipes as she cleaned beside Marie. Gently, she nudged her friend on the side to get her attention. It'd be nice to clean ourselves up too. Let's grab that and go to the next room. She wrinkled her nose. I really want to get this stink off me. Marie nodded. Yes, let's do that. I'm sure Mr. Kong won't mind. And they both snuck outside with the tub tucked underneath Amy's shirt. The two women laughed as they wiped their bodies from head to toe. Although it felt gross to put their old clothes back on, they had managed to wipe off most of the dirt on their skin. And really, it was better than nothing. Feeling somewhat refreshed, they returned to join the others in the next room. To their delight, the aroma of coffee greeted them as they walked in. In the far corner, Patrick sat with his legs crossed, hunching protectively over his plastic cup. I was wondering where you'd gone, Mr. Kong said, smiling as he handed Amy and Marie 2 steaming cups. Drink up, all of you. His smile slowly disappeared as he added, and after we're done, we have to talk. Chapter 9. What were you doing in the tunnels? Mr. Kong blew at his coffee before taking a noisy sip. We were looking for shelter, Justin explained. This morning our car was stolen, and we had to walk on foot all the way here. He shook his head, still disbelieving. Honestly? We were damn lucky to have run into you. We really had no idea where to go. Amy leaned forward, brimming with curiosity. Mr. Kong, why are you alone here? If you were here from the beginning, did you witness what happened? Mr. Kong laughed. All these questions, but we have plenty of time, so I'll answer them. He settled comfortably in his chair. Judging by his lively face, Amy could tell that he was the type who enjoyed recounting a good tale to his audience. My wife and I have been working as cleaners at Central Creek Mall for 15 years. 15 years. How time flies. A faraway expression filled his eyes. We were defectors from North Korea. Let me tell you, it was tough trying to escape from that wretched hellhole. But on a winter night, we managed to somehow cross the border into China and stay hidden there for 5 months. With the help of a Korean missionary worker, we were able to enter South Korea. But it was difficult to adjust. So much food, all the bright lights, not to mention cultural differences. After about 2 years, we were still struggling. It was odd. We shared a common ancestry and history with the South Koreans, and yet we felt like complete foreigners there. So we thought, why don't we move to a faraway country then? Either way, we're still going to feel like foreigners. Might as well feel like one in a Western country. The idea grew on us as time went on. With excitement, we made plans, applied for visas, and immigrated to the United States. He paused, sipping at his coffee. My English was extremely poor back then. So when my wife and I came to America, the first thing we did was attend a local Korean church. There, we found kind people who were willing to help us find a job. We became cleaners at Central Creek Mall. It was a blessing that we could earn money and put food on the table. I was eventually promoted to supervisor, and we continued working there year after year. Life was simple and good. Several weeks ago, my wife and I drove to the mall, ready to begin another day's work. She wanted to stop by at the supermarket to buy a few things, so we made a small detour before going to the office. Mr. Kong paused. And that was the beginning of the end. What happened? Marie breathed. A deep line formed between his brows. There was a lot of commotion on the first floor. At first, people were running and screaming. Then minutes later, they were running and tearing. He blinked and gazed up at the ceiling. So much blood. The floors became slippery with blood and vomit and smashed organs. For a frightening second, I lost my grip on my wife's hand. She was a few paces behind me. When I went back for her, I saw a large man slam into her side. It all happened so fast. Before I knew it, she was trying to tear my throat out with her teeth. His breathing grew ragged. I'm afraid I ran like the coward I was. To this day, she's still wandering around inside the mall. It's like she's waiting for me to return to her. No one knew what to say after that. Even Patrick seemed at a loss for words. After a long stretch of awkward silence, Amy croaked out, "So you've been alone all this time?" Mr. Kong shook his head no. I couldn't get out of the mall. There was a mad rush at the entrance, where people were getting trampled on. When I managed to stumble outside with a bunch of screaming people, I tripped over a young man who'd toppled over a bench. I later found out that he was a reporter. Together, we ran down the tunnel, then entered the staff door and locked ourselves in here for days. A sound of deep frustration rumbled in his throat. The fool would still be alive today if he hadn't ventured outside on his own to look for his cameraman's equipment. Amy sat up, filled with questions again. "Did he tell you anything?" she asked with eagerness. "About the source of this virus? Did he say who was responsible?" "Well," Mr. Kong rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "The last update he received was something about a coordinated attack. Apparently, LA, New York City, Washington, D.C., even a few major international cities were included in the attack. It wasn't just us. A coordinated attack on a worldwide scale. This meant that it hadn't been their government messing around with an experimental virus gone awry. The raving DJ on the radio station had been wrong." Silence fell over them once again as they contemplated this new piece of information. The night deepened, and the muffled sounds of hisses and snarls grew thicker around them. Daniel stirred, clearing his throat. "We need to find a working car," he said. "Mr. Kong, can you help us? You know the area well." "You have to go somewhere?" Justin nodded. "We were separated from our friend. He's waiting for us at a designated spot, but it's too far to go on foot. We need a car with a tank full of gas." Mr. Kong appraised his visitors over the rim of his plastic cup. Amy fidgeted and stared back at him. What was he thinking? Had their request been a bit presumptuous? Here, the man had rescued them, fed them, and would even shelter them for the night. Did he think they were asking for too much? "I will help you," Mr. Kong said finally. "But in return, you must do something for me." "Of course," Amy answered, but she felt uneasy. There was a strange glitter in his eyes. He stood up and paced the room, mumbling to himself in his native tongue. Amy watched him, baffled. Her confusion grew when Daniel and Marie suddenly stiffened beside her. It seemed that they'd caught snatches of his speech and understood what he was saying. Mr. Kong came to an abrupt stop and stood before his visitors, his breathing somewhat labored. "I'll give you my station wagon. It's parked in the staff parking space. In return," he looked into their faces one by one, "I want you to help me catch my wife." Amy lay on the hard ground, hugging a clean blanket to her chest. She couldn't sleep. To her left, Marie spooned Walter and snored softly into his floppy ear. And Daniel spooned his wife, his arm protectively wrapped around her. They had turned the lanterns off and replaced them with glow sticks. At first, they had decided to sleep without any light, but the permeating darkness had proven too overwhelming. In the end, they had opted to use a couple of sticks to keep the place lit. On the other side of the room, Patrick's snores bounced off the walls. It sounded like he had a pair of tubas in his chest instead of lungs. She hid a smile when Mr. Kong, muttering imprecations under his breath, took his blanket and stepped outside. She heard his footsteps shuffling into the office and the soft click of the door closing. Briefly, she wondered if she should join him. She desperately needed sleep, and there would be none of it for her in this room. "Are you asleep?" Justin whispered. He was lying on the ground to Amy's right. "No," she replied. "And frankly, I don't know how Daniel and Marie can sleep with all that brass fanfare playing over there. I wish they'd let me in on the secret." Justin chuckled softly. "They're completely exhausted, that's why." "So am I." He rolled over to his side, facing her. "Maybe this will help," he said, and cupped her ears with his warm hands. It did help, but now she couldn't hear a single word he was saying. With an impatient sigh, she gently pulled his hands away. "Are we really going to do it?" she asked him. "We don't have a choice, not if we want his station wagon. There has to be another way. Heck, we don't even need his car. I bet there are plenty of vehicles around the mall." "Maybe, but I think we kind of owe him. It's the least we can do." Amy felt her temper flare up. "Let me get this straight. You're saying because he gave us food and shelter, that we should risk our lives to catch a runner?" A prolonged silence. "I know how it sounds," Justin said quietly, "and you're right. It's dangerous. But not all of us have to do this. With proper planning, 1 or 2 of us should be more than enough to help Mr. Kong." Amy sighed loudly. "I don't know whether you're just brave or simply foolhardy." "Foolhardy, I suspect," Justin said with a grin. His gaze softened as he edged closer to her. "Don't worry. Everything's going to be fine. I promise." She didn't want him to make rash promises. Turning her back to him, she curled into a fetal position, feeling vulnerable and uncertain. Entering an open space with runners lurking about was one thing. But to go close enough to catch one? How were they supposed to tie it up? Or even make it walk alongside them? It was madness. A terrible sense of foreboding settled over her. A warm arm wrapped around her from behind, and she felt Justin's breath tickle her neck. "This is nice," he said into her ear. "Try to get some sleep, okay? We've had quite a day." Amy nodded, but worry gnawed at her, chasing away her exhaustion and keeping her eyes wide open long after Justin fell asleep. Chapter 10. The next morning, Mr. Kong served them cereal with powdered milk, peaches, and hot coffee for breakfast. As expected, Patrick ate with gusto, stuffing his face even before he had time to swallow the food already in his mouth. He was the only one who seemed unaffected by the burdensome request of the night before. Because he has no intention of going out there, Amy thought as she glanced at the older man. And he already knows that we won't make him do it. As for the rest, a heavy silence hung above them as they ate their soggy cereal. When they finished and cleaned up, Mr. Kong suggested a trip to one of the retail department stores. "What for?" Amy asked. "And what if there are runners nearby?" Mr. Kong appeared confused. "Runners? Oh, you mean the infected." He gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry. I know this mall like the back of my hand. Just follow my lead, and you'll be fine. And, forgive me," he added, "but you kids need some new clothes." His nostrils flared in distaste. "You know you stink, right? Clean clothes and underwear." Just the thought cheered Amy up instantly. She rose to her feet, excitement etched all over her face. "By the way, do you have extra guns?" Mr. Kong shook his head. "I'm afraid not. I only have the one gun that I managed to swipe off a dead security guard last week. But there are some gardening tools around. You could use them as weapons. In fact, I'll bring them over now." And he quickly left the room, the door clicking closed behind him. Justin cleared his throat. "While he's gone, we might as well address the elephant in the room." When no one answered him, he continued on. "I've decided to help Mr. Kong with his request in exchange for his car. But I think one more person should volunteer. Is there anyone willing to help out?" There was a long pause as everyone eyed each other. In the end, Daniel inclined his head. "I'll do it. But I really don't know how we can subdue a runner. It seems impossible." "We'll have to figure that one out," Justin agreed. "Thanks for volunteering. I knew I could count on you." Amy turned to Marie. "Meanwhile, Maybe we can stock up the wagon with food, clothes, blankets, medicine, and water. Make sure that we have more than enough to sustain us on the road. We'll need to make several trips for that, Marie mused. Definitely. Half an hour later, Mr. Kong returned, struggling with a hoe and a pitchfork. Here. I think these will do nicely. The tools clattered to the ground as he straightened to catch his breath. Mr. Kong, forgive me, but I have to ask. Amy ignored Justin's warning glance, keeping her tone firm. I think, given the dangerous situation you're putting us in, that we have a right to know why you want to catch your wife. What will you do once she's in your hands? There was a tinge of sadness around his smile. With a sigh, he sat down and stared into space. As I told you last night, my wife and I escaped from North Korea together. We've always been together, as far back as I can remember. His brows nodded. I need to get her away from the other infected people. Once she's in here, I will barricade the office to make sure that none of the infected can get in. Just as we escaped from that hellhole together, I will make certain that my wife and I escape from this spiraling madness together. You mean, Amy started, and Mr. Kong nodded, seeing the shock on her face. Yes. It's time to put my wife out of her misery. For a while, I felt comforted just having her nearby somewhere, despite her altered state. How foolish I was. It's time to finish this once and for all. He was talking about ending whatever was left of his wife's life and his own. Amy shivered as she stared at his overly calm expression. He seemed at peace with his decision. She tried one more time. Come with us, she offered. You can bring peace to your wife and then get away from this place. Our friend knows someone who owns a farm. That's where we're headed. You can start over. Without my wife? He cut in with a hollow laugh. What's the point of that? Without my wife, my life has no meaning. He raised a hand when Amy opened her mouth to protest. Enough. I thank you for your kindness, but my mind is made up. By the way, he added, fishing around in his pockets, here are my car keys. You'll need it when you leave the mall. The staff parking space is close to where we are, so make sure to fill the car with everything you need before you leave. He was done talking about the issue. Amy shot a helpless glance at Justin, but he simply shook his head in response. Just let the man be. It had been a lot easier than Amy had expected. Mr. Kong hadn't lied. He knew the mall inside out as well as where the runners would be at certain hours. Slipping in and out through staff doors, he had silently led Amy and Marie through safe paths, never straying into the open where they would be seen. Mr. Kong hadn't been kidding about the slaughter. The walls, pillars, and floors caked with dried blood, decomposed limbs and body parts strewn everywhere, long blonde hair matted in dark red. The images haunted Amy whenever she closed her eyes. By the time she, Marie, and Patrick finished stocking the station wagon with all their belongings and food boxes, it was mid-afternoon. All done, Amy declared as the three of them entered the meeting room. We're good to go. Justin and Daniel had been busy all morning as well, sneaking outside to observe the runners' whereabouts and movements. They had created a diversion, mannequins strategically placed on the open terrace of a restaurant, giving the illusion of human bait, with a battery-operated CD/DVD player connected to speakers. Their plan was simple. While the player attracted the runners by blaring an entire DVD's worth of episodes from a soap opera known for its dramatic catfights and rowdy celebrations, Justin and Daniel would trap Mr. Kong's wife on the other side of the mall with tennis nets, masking tape, and a shopping cart. Once she was tangled in the nets, they would tape her mouth and body, nets and all, and then stuff her headfirst into the cart and wheel her back to the closest staff door, where Mr. Kong would be waiting. It was a crude plan, but they hadn't been able to come up with a better one in such a short time. I guess it's our turn now, Justin said, eyeing the full shopping cart. He turned to Daniel. Go to the restaurant and turn the player on. I'll be waiting for you on the other end, on the second floor. When Daniel left, Justin turned to the others. Go and wait in the car. When we return, we'll be leaving straight away." He nodded at Mr. Kong. "If you're ready." Mr. Kong paused to face the women. "Goodbye," he said. "Thank you, and may you stay safe." He reached out and squeezed their hands, then soothed Marie quietly in their native tongue when he saw her weeping. Once she calmed down, Mr. Kong and Justin stepped out of the room. Minutes passed. At their feet, Walter barked once, snapping them out of their trance. Amy took a deep breath. "We might as well wait in the car, like Justin told us to." After Marie picked up Walter, the three of them went down the corridor and out of the tunnels for good. Amy sat in the driver's seat, nervously tapping her fingers on the steering wheel. Outside, she had seen a lone runner wandering behind the rusty fence. She hoped that it wouldn't see the open gate and invite itself into the staff parking space. More than 40 minutes had passed. Where were Justin and Daniel? Were they safe? What if their plan hadn't worked? Unable to help it, Amy began tapping on the steering wheel again. "Stop that," Patrick snapped. He was sitting in the back seat. "It's annoying." "Yeah, sorry about that." She sighed, fidgeting in her seat. "I wonder what's taking them so long." No sooner had she said the words than the staff door flung open, and Justin and Daniel burst out and ran toward the car. They were both covered in red. "Hurry!" Marie shouted. "There's a runner outside." The runner snarled, then raced past the fence to attack Justin and Daniel. So fast, Amy thought as she watched with horrified eyes. She could never get used to their freakish speed. Luckily, Justin had brought the pitchfork with him. He rammed the tines into the runner as it leaped toward him. The tines pierced the head and protruded out the back of the skull. Amy gagged at the sight and looked away. Justin and Daniel hurried into the wagon. "Are you all right?" she asked, swallowing her nausea. "Were you hurt in any way?" "We're fine," Justin said. "What about Mr. Kong?" Marie asked hesitantly. She swiveled her head around, staring at the open staff door. "Did you try to change his mind?" A loud gunshot sounded inside the corridor. Silence. Then a second gunshot. This time, the silence remained eerily permanent. Marie burst into tears, leaning against her husband as he consoled her in whispery tones. When Amy sat there, frozen, Justin reached over and gripped her shoulder hard. "The gunshots are going to attract more runners," he said. "We need to leave now." "Of course." She drove the station wagon out of the gate and onto an empty road, wiping the warm tears flowing down her face as she put more distance between them and Central Creek Mall. It was a place she hoped never to see again. End of The Collapse, Part 2. I hope you enjoyed The Collapse, Part 2. Please like and subscribe and turn on all notifications if you would like more content from this channel and links to V.A. Brandon's books.